Hey guys, it's me, Skeetlejuice. I'm really excited to start this new series and I hope that you guys enjoy it. Welcome to the first installment of what I'm lovingly calling History by Daylight. The lore of the Dead by Daylight universe runs so deep and has such beautiful aspects. I'm really excited to do a deep dive and share them all with you. But when deciding where to start, I figured it would be most beneficial to talk about the root cause of the trials. Who or what is the entity? Before we do a deep dive on individual killers or survivors, it would make sense for us to really talk about who or what caused the realm to form. The fog is a place that most people don't willingly walk into, and most of our killers and survivors were taken by force. But by what? The entity is described as a malevolent being. It creates realms where players are forced to compete in sadistic games, which is pretty freaky. It's the ruler of the fog. It consumes the terror that comes from those survivors who are hunted by the killers and feeds off of the bloodlust. But why? Allegedly an ancient being and is described as being almost as old as the universe itself, it's considered an original or an ancient. It takes on many forms: fog, crows, spidery claws. It uses whispers to communicate and often contains hidden messages. In certain trials, survivors can actually hear the entity's messages under the effects of madness. Not too much is known about the entity. It's rarely seen by the players, except for when it manifests with long, spindly, spider like claws that collect a survivor's sacrifice. If a survivor does manage to escape a trial, it doesn't mean that they've escaped the entity. They're stuck in an endless cycle of terror and killing. After being sacrificed, the survivors have their memories altered. With each sacrifice, more and more of the survivors' souls are taken, eventually rendering them to be empty shells, devoid of hope or emotion. Once they reach that stage, they're considered useless by the ancient being, the entity, and are thrown into a sub-realm called the Void. That's a place that many have escaped to, including Vigo. We'll talk about him later. How does the entity survive? Throughout time, the entity has actually become more powerful, feeding off of the emotions and bloodlust of the survivors and the killers. The most interesting aspect has to be the Black Veil, a cult that was dedicated to worshiping the malevolent enigma that is the entity. One of the most notable, but not the only cult who spends its time trying to find new survivors to sacrifice or new killers to provide terror within the fog. Their goal is to empower the entity enough where it consumes the entire universe. Their success is shown with a phenomenon known as bleeds, or overlaps, which have been increasing in size and in frequency all around the world. These are in locations in which the entity and the real world collide, typically where killers were taken, like the Crotus Pen Asylum. The contents of the bleeds do vary depending on where they are. It could be something as simple as one of the killers appearing to kill you, or other strange visions that beguile and trick you. Because of this, there is someone that we need to talk about: Vigo. Who is he? He's a character that's mentioned in some parts of the game. Vigo was an inventor and a researcher. He's heavily studied the entity, trying to solve the mystery of what or who it was, where it came from. It's known that he has a lab within the confines of the entity's realm. He found his way out of the void by collecting and creating a serum, one he named Putrid Serum, from a flower that grew there. Vigo's known for his studies, his research, his inventions within the realm. He's the alleged creator of the hatch, since it was not created by the entity. There are offerings that include information about him, such as Salty Jar of Lips, his shroud, his blueprint, all of which give an advantage, like increased luck, starting the trial close by your teammates, or giving specific spawn locations for the hatch. Extremely valuable information and advantages for players to use to escape, or limiting the survivor's ability to escape the trials. A lot of information about him can be found in the tomes, the unlockables, and the cosmetics. It's pretty neat. Inside the entity is also a very strange place. Aside from the trial locations where survivors and killers interact, there are several other places that we've yet to see. They're randomly placed and are not easy to access. The Lost Realms are a bigger mystery than the entity. Lovingly referred to by the devs as, quote, an emotion vampire, when asked how it sustains itself. We've learned that the survivors are clearly not stepping into the fog willingly, but what about the killers? How are they convinced to do this evil creature's bidding? Arguably, there's a degree of torture that comes from the entity needing to force unwilling participants into the trials. One of the most notable is Evan McMillan, the Trapper. He has numerous iron hooks shoved through his torso, and Talbot Grimes, the Blight, being forced to mutate into a snarling, feral beast leaking serum. Other killers, however, chose the games as a way to satisfy their own infernal need to incite terror and bloodshed. There are a few cases that the pain and suffering of the killers happened prior to being taken. The Spirit, whose alteration was at the hands of her father, the Plague, who was diseased before she was taken, the Wraith, who was minding his business and got deceived. Not every killer is taken because of their sheer physical force or their need for bloodshed. Some of them were just sources of immense suffering in the real world. The entity knew they could feed off of them and get a little closer to dominating multiple realms. Makes things a little bit more dark, right? The Huntress, Trickster, the Clown, and Ghostface willingly carry out the entity's biddings for that reason. What can the entity do or not do? The entity has a myriad of special abilities and powers, those it can use itself, and those it can give to its killers to enrich the trials and make them more difficult for survivors to, well, survive. After hearing all of this, I'd love to know, what do you think the entity is? Share in the comments below your headcanons and theories. I'd love to hear them. Until next time, thanks for watching.